G'day, ZiggyD here. Grim Dawn has finally received its pure spellcaster class, the Arcanist. It's been long awaited, something I've been very much looking forward to. We had the Occultist and the Demolitionist, which were called a kind of pseudo spellcasters, but we never had that pure spellcaster, that pure like elementalist or pure power style spellcaster. Well, I have to say, Crate have really outdone themselves with this class. Straight away jumping on this, every single skill I've tried out so far, I've really liked, and that's the first time that's happened. Every other class, there's kind of some skills I like, some I didn't. Yeah, some things I made builds out of, and it worked out okay, and overall the game sort of carried it more than the classes did, I thought. But the Arcanist class does something else. Man, this class comes together brilliantly, and there's so many good potential combos here, and the skills just have real impact and powerful feel to them. So I'm very impressed with the Arcanist class. I only played for a little while so far, only a couple hours, and this is just a first look at the class. Maybe later I'll be able to bring you guys like a build, some of the interesting looks at some more interesting developed builds. But at the moment, just kind of I've invested in the class and tried out some skills essentially and come up with some sort of basic, very low level build. I'm only level 19 using very bad gear basically, so just getting started, but it should give you guys at least a little bit of a first look at the class. So we're going to start off, I'm just going to start off and jump straight in and kill some monsters, and then we'll go through and I'll explain kind of my setup, and then I'll take a look at some of the other skills and give you guys some thoughts on those as well. So let's head north here and I'll sort of show you how my character plays at the moment. Essentially what I'm going to do here is round up a bit of a pack. It's not much of a pack here, but we'll try. We'll freeze these guys, and then I'll explode them. Oh, baby. Oh, these guys are over there. We'll chuck some meteors down on those guys. I completely missed. Oops. Way to look not cool. Alright, let's chuck some meteors down on those guys. There we go, that's what we want to see. Like, let's burn these guys down with some Albrecht's Aether Ray. Oh, not enough? Maybe we're running out of mana? Let's just shoot some of our little magic missiles here. Nice and cheap and very spammable. Oh, this class feels cool. The look of the spells, the feel of the spells, man, it just comes together so well. I'm really, really impressed. So, essentially, what I'm doing here is I have this Flash Freeze here, Alexa's Flash Freeze. This is a very powerful defensive and offensive skill. It's a 100% guaranteed freeze, though it doesn't work very well against all bosses and things like that. But essentially, you can get a pack. It's an AoE around your character. The AoE actually increases with levels, as does the duration. Get a pack, freeze them, and it actually debuffs their fire resistance as well, which is funny, but freezing them reduces their fire resist. Now, it may not look like it, but this second skill I'm using here, which is Kalidor's Tempest, is a combination skill. It includes two types of damage, fire damage and aether damage. So the aether damage isn't impacted by the reduced fire resist, but the fire damage certainly is. So what I actually do is I debuff their fire resistance and then hit them with a skill that deals some fire damage there, causing them to take more damage from those attacks. So that's been a really nice combo. So not only am I freezing them and stopping them from being able to attack me, so very defensively powerful, but I'm also causing them to take more damage as well. So really nice stuff. So you can see that's about 190 to 220 damage there without the freeze. We'll freeze these guys here. And I'm seeing like 240 damage in there, so a pretty nice little jump up, and with further investment, that's going to increase even more. You can see that more points into that reduces their fire resist by even further, as well as increasing the radius of the freeze, which is going to be very nice, and increasing the duration of the freeze, so you have another chance. So once you get maybe to like 3 seconds, you can actually get another one of your actual burst attacks in as well. So the next thing, the other thing to know about this Kalidor's Tempest is that it actually scales off weapon damage partially as well. So that's like, you know, if you're dealing with fizz damage or something, it's like whatever, I'm just not really going to add much. But in this patch, they also added in, since they're adding a spellcaster, it makes a lot of sense, they also added in some spellcaster weapons. So there are now sacrificial knives and dagger type weapons, and there are also these kind of like mini scepter things, like these elemental scepters. Now the key thing about these is that they deal less damage for attacking, so they do less damage, but it's non-physical damage, so they can actually roll in all different types of damage. They can roll in vitality, aether, fire, lightning, cold, etc, etc. So this one just here is a fire damage dagger. Now you're probably getting the sense here, oh, this maybe the pieces are connecting together here, because this one here takes my weapon damage and I'm kind of focusing on the fire, right? I'm scaling fire as much as possible. It's adding extra fire damage from my dagger. Now I managed to find a dagger that had base fire damage as well as additional fire damage and fire scaling on top of that, and I socketed it with a fire component as well, 46 fire damage. I've actually socketed as many things as I could with flat fire damage, so I have another fire component just here, and I think Lazarus Ruby gives me some flat fire damage as well as scaling. So all that flat damage combines together to be my weapon damage, and then this skill, a spell, takes a part of that. So it pulls some power from your weapon and turns that into the skill. So I'm adding a lot of fire damage. I'm focusing on the fire damage for this skill. So this is kind of what I'm doing with my build at the moment. And it's pretty interesting that you can do this sort of thing. And this addition of these new caster weapons allows for you to better customize your character and to better take advantage of skills or spells that take your weapon damage, because there's quite a few of them across all the classes, but there's never been a way to leverage them in your build. So something like a cold weapon, a cold dagger, could be handy on a Nightblade build now, for example, if you're going into a cold spec, whereas before you were just getting some physical damage that didn't really matter. So that's pretty cool stuff. The other skill I'm using just here, Albrecht's Aether Ray, is a fantastic single target. Can be used to mop up packs a little bit or clean up a few stragglers, but it's not the best AoE because it only shoots one target at a time. However, the damage is phenomenal. It's actually a combination damage again. It's Aether and Fire, the same. So the same things that scale my other skills scale this one as well. But it's the Fire that I'm mostly focusing on. So I can freeze like a single target if I want, and then Aether Ray them down. Now this skill is amazing. It's such high damage. As soon as I got it, any single target damage problems I had were instantly gone. Like I was able to melt down heroes really, really quickly. And it just feels so powerful too. It looks so impressive. Like look at that thing. Just that beam. You just feel like you're melting things, and it's got like a kind of slow turning circle, so it's like, yeah, you're really trying to channel that powerful skill. I like it. I like it quite a lot. And yeah, man, all these skills just feel amazing. So the next thing was one I was just trying a little bit, but not one that fits into my build, is Chosen Sky Shard. I wanted to keep a point in it just to show you guys because it's a cool looking skill. Essentially, it summons down 3 meteors. I don't know if this increases or not as you invest in it more, but it does increase the radius as you invest more into it. So you can see it increases the radius there a little bit extra. So not really sure exactly how that works. It says it just increases the radius of the actual meteors that fall down, maybe, so that might not add a meteor at all. But essentially what this does, it summons 3 meteors, and I think, although this is kind of an AoE skill looking at first, I think it actually probably works a little bit better as a single target, or works well as a single target as well. Because essentially, if you're fighting like a boss or a larger target, you can actually have all 3 of them hit the same mob more easily, tripling your damage essentially. So it deals pretty good damage per hit. With 1 point, it's like 80 damage at this point, which is pretty nice. And then you get to times that by 3 for large targets. And the larger the target is, the more you're guaranteed for all of those missiles to collide with it. So I actually think it's pretty powerful for that. It's also great for like picking off spellcasters. Let's say this guy's in the way. If I was going to hit him with Albrecht's Aether Ray, this mob would probably get in the way. But I can pick him off with meteors because it sort of jumps over the packs, like it comes down from the sky. So it's great for picking off things that are a bit out of the way. Although I keep missing with it like a noob. There we go. So not much investment at the moment, but I think it's a pretty cool skill, and definitely one you could incorporate into a more mobile build, because it's one that you can shoot and scoot with, whereas Albrecht's Ray is you need to stand still and channel it. So I think that's a pretty interesting spell. The next skill I wanted to show off was this one here, Mirror of Erectus. I can't pronounce it. It's the Mirror skill. We're going to call it the Mirror skill. This is 100% damage absorption. You've probably seen this on the Shadow in the past. Very powerful defensive thing. So 3 seconds of 100% damage absorption. It also has a reflect as well, 35% reflect at the moment, and the more levels you put into that, the higher the reflect gets, and the shorter the cooldown. So at the moment it's on a 24-second cooldown. So essentially this means I can stand here, I can become completely immune, I can move around if I want, you can move, you can even attack while under the effects, and it reflects damage back to enemies, so that can actually cause quite a bit of damage against bosses and things like that as well. But especially once you scale it up, and you can eventually get to like 100% damage reflection. And then there's some other stuff on like the Arcanist and on gear that you can get in terms of reflection. I think a pure reflect build is definitely possible with this. But it's also just a really powerful defensive skill and allows you to go really crazy, like ham on enemies, because I've built very glass cannon. I don't have any defense on my gear really, and I also have not invested into anything like sort of to make my character tanky. So what I do is I jump in, I freeze mobs, I AoE them down, Or let's say I'm channeling against a boss or a powerful single target. I'll start channeling. Once I start taking damage, I pop my damage immunity, which I can do while channeling. And then, I'm immune to damage, so I rely on powerful skills to keep me alive. So I freeze enemies, which keeps me alive. Or I just kill them before they can attack me. Or I use damage immunity, things like that. Maybe not the best hardcore setup, but allows you to go really glass cannoning on this character and rely on those powerful defensive mechanics. I think there's also some good potential for comboing with Shadow, for example, to make use of some other very powerful defensive mechanics. And it's probably also pretty possible to spec into Soldier to make up for the lack of defense and to go for that instead. Oh, we found another Explorer's cover. I've actually got 2 of those now. So there you go. I've noticed a few new items came in this build too. That's pretty cool stuff. That's pretty cool stuff. The next thing I'm using here is Reckless Power. This gives 30% damage boost, and I believe that scales up as well. It does, yes, but it debuffs your life, and the life debuff actually scales up as well. So you see when I pop that, I lose 200 life, so I become even squishier, but I deal more damage, and that's all that really matters. The most important thing here is though, although I lose life and become really squishy, I can still rely on these 100% damage mitigators like freezing the enemies or 100% damage mitigation. Now the next skill I wanted to talk about was Panetti's Replicating Missile. This is something you can just use as a spammable, like kind of left mouse button replaces skill, so something you can use instead of your default attack. It costs a little bit of energy, but it's quite cheap with that much investment. You can just use that to spam with. There's a bit of stuff you can do to invest into it to give it like a bit of extra stun and stuff like that. But I think it actually is a very interesting skill and one that can become very powerful when invested heavily into. So at this point I've only got 1 point into it, so it doesn't do too much, so I stick with my main AoE skills. I use it sometimes to range things down or kill things that are almost dead. But yeah, as I said, with a bit more investment, I think it actually has a lot of potential. Let's kill these guys here, being a bit of a pain. So, I'll show you guys here. You can actually see that Panetti's extends the entire tree. So that's kind of like one of those things that leads you to, start thinking that this is a skill that has some potential, something that you can really invest a lot of points into and have it be your main skill. So this one just here, essentially the way it works is it fires a single projectile that when it hits an enemy, fires 3 other projectiles out in a random direction. They're kind of evenly split from each other, but the position of it will change. And the way then that you combine this with the distortion modifier just here gives it a chance to pass through enemies. So this scales up 20% at level 1 and it scales up from there. What this means is that essentially each time it pierces or penetrates through an enemy, it will also proc the extra projectiles. So you'll shoot out 3 projectiles, and then you'll hit another mob, you shoot out 3 projectiles, hit another mob, shoot out 3 projectiles. So let's say there's like 4 enemies in a line, and you roll right, or you've invested enough into this, and you roll well. It'll hit each of the 4 mobs through with the initial projectile, and then 3 more projectiles will shoot out and hit other mobs in the area. So there's really high potential AoE damage there, and a lot of damage effectiveness. It's also very spammable, and with a bit of cast speed, it'll essentially work like a machine gun that kind of has an explosive impact as well. So kind of like a non-AoE skill that becomes very effective in AoE with that investment. And then later here we have the proliferation point here, which adds an extra fragment. So once you get to 4 fragments, each projectile you're shooting is giving you 4 projectiles at least for hitting 1 mob, but if you're hitting multiple mobs, it's giving you an extra 4, extra 4, extra 4. So lots of potential damage there. There's also supercharged here, which gives chance to stun, so you can have some mitigation there. I'm not sure if that scales, but if that does, that can be pretty potent, because I could see you shooting enough projectiles out there that even with 10% chance to stun, if you're putting out like 100 projectiles really quickly, you're gonna stun a lot of stuff. So very powerful potential pack stunning there. So I think that's a pretty cool skill, and one that I kind of tempted to build around at some point as well. So I'll probably make a build with that at some point. So I'll go over a few of the other skills and some of the transmuters as well. Talked about Calidor's Tempest already. The modifier that adds a dot, so you can do some interesting things here, because the transmuter gives it a cooldown. It gives it a long cooldown there, so it has a 5-second skill recharge. Not a super long cooldown, but it's not something you can spam. Like at the moment, it's a very spammable skill, right? It's just based on your cast speed. But with this one just here, it gives it a 5-second recharge. Obviously you can reduce that with cooldown reductions, but the idea is it gives you a lot more extra damage, so you'll see the 200% total damage just there, and then a knockdown chance as well, so it becomes a little bit defensive too. So essentially you can knock down enemies and then have your skill recharge and keep spamming it, but because it's on a cooldown, you can combo it by putting a lot of points into Inferno, which I think when you're using a spammable skill, damage over time effects are not really that helpful, because you only get the benefit from it the first time it applies until it runs out. But once you combo it with Wrath of Agravix here, you can essentially have a lot of points into the damage over time effect, hit them once, and then every 5 seconds you can reapply this. You can see that the burn lasts for 2 seconds and it reduces their armor for 5 seconds. So there's some time-based things there. And essentially you're dealing damage still in between casts as well. So with a bit of cooldown reduction, you can probably get that down to like 2.5 seconds or something. And then you're dealing dots the entire time and it's working out really efficiently. So there's some pretty cool stuff you can do with that just there. The transmuter for Albrecht's Aether Ray turns the Aether damage into Chaos damage, so if you're stacking Aether damage, that will all be converted to Chaos damage, and then if you're stacking Chaos damage or Chaos damage scaling, it'll scale that as well. So this allows you to also potentially get a really high damage with this. Firstly, I heard it changes the beam to make it red, which is badass. But it means you can scale Aether damage, so you can get Aether scaling, and you can get Chaos scaling. So you can double dip on the damage scaling for this. So you can potentially get insane damage with this if you set up your character well and gear it well as well. So pretty potent stuff. The kind of like the ultimate ability here is Devastation. This one sounds a lot like Warcraft 2 and 3's Blizzard skill. Where the spellcasters would cast a wave of blizzards that would keep waving, and the longer they channel, the more waves of blizzards. So as you can see, if you stand still beyond the first cast, you will unleash up to 2 additional waves. So you can actually stand there AoEing down. So if mobs are stunned, or if you've got a party member holding them still, you can keep unleashing those very powerful waves of fire and Aether damage there as well. So that sounds like a pretty awesome finishing move, and it sounds perfect for the Arcanist. Maven's Spear of Protection is a defensive skill. It is very defensive in the true sense of the word, in that it actually reduces your offensive ability. You see minus 50 total damage. Investing into this reduces that a bit, but it's still going to give you some sort of damage penalty. Maybe at max level it doesn't give you any damage penalty, but early on it certainly does. And this gives you a flat damage absorption, 30%, and then it also gives you a chance to avoid projectiles as well. The secondary effect, I think, is what makes this very potent, which reduces crowd control as well. So that can be a spell you use when you're in very dangerous situations with very dangerous mobs to reduce all of those things. Stun and freeze especially are really potent to get reductions of those, so that's very nice stuff. And it also gives you enemy energy absorption from enemy spells, so that can be a good way to go defensive for a while, essentially go defensive for the duration of this, which is 18 seconds, and regen your energy. So if you're playing a very burst heavy spec, you can just unload all of your energy and then pop this bubble and become very defensive. You're not dealing damage anyway because you're out of energy, and then regen your damage from enemy spells, regen your energy from enemy spells. So that seems like another interesting way to play, and it's a skill that I can't use in this spec, for example, but you could use in some specific specs, or you could just use as a general defensive skill. Nullification is kind of a dispel skill. It removes debuffs from your characters and removes buffs from enemy characters. It works on allies as well, so pretty potent one if you're in party play, and a pretty powerful skill, I think, when used in higher level zones that have some powerful debuffs and things like that to reduce those. It also gives some reduction to elemental damage as well, which is just a nice bonus. Now the final one here is Iskandra's Elemental Exchange. This gives you bonus elemental damage on your attacks and a chance for flat energy leech per second. So this could be used in a more combat-oriented Arcanist, so maybe something's comboed with Soldier or Nightblade, or even Demolitionist with ranged attacks, to give yourself some energy return, so to help keep your energy up, so rather than having to invest in energy regen. And it can also be used with the Manifestation Transmuter just here to reduce your damage, but apply that damage like threefold to your allies, to your pets essentially, sorry, not your allies. So you can see minus 10 elemental damage on yourself, but 30% elemental damage on your pets, so this turns this kind of into an aura for your pets. So that's potentially pretty powerful when comboed with the Occultist, obviously. And then the final thing I want to show off, there's a couple other passives and stuff, but a lot of them just scale stats and things like that, is Arcane Will. This one's kind of fun. It activates when your health drops below 50%, and then gives you 35 total damage increase, and that scales up. And essentially it gives you 6 seconds of super damage, so you can let your health drop down below, you can activate Mirror, or you can freeze the enemies, get a huge damage boost, and then kind of play it safer, or you can even heal up, but you'll still keep that 6-second duration. So that's pretty cool. Every 6 seconds, if you play, if your health jumps around quite a bit, say you're playing, a softcore, not a hardcore spec. I don't recommend that one in hardcore, but in softcore, it really suits the idea of a powerful, explosive glass cannon style character. So as I said, overall, I'm very impressed with the feel of this class. All the skills feel very impactful. It's all very fun to play, and I can see a lot of potential combos within the class itself and with other classes too. I can see it comboing really nicely with stuff, and I'm pretty hyped to make a few different builds out of this. So hopefully you guys are keen. If you already own Grim Dawn, you can just jump on and the patch should download automatically, and you can try out this new class, give it a bit of a go, and also try out some of the new features, new quests and stuff that tend to get snuck in there with each new build. Otherwise, if you guys haven't played Grim Dawn before, you can, it's in early access beta at the moment, and you can buy into it if you would like to help support development. For most people, I recommend just keeping an eye on the game until you're sure, or if you think it looks particularly badass, maybe you can help support development, and that will be pretty cool too. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.